Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. We're rolling into the, long weekend week here in the US and Canada, sort of split between them. Excited for this super short week.
Yeah, it's very funny. I feel like, as I said to you, as I was booking calls and stuff for this week, pretty much everyone is out of office until next week, it feels like, which makes next week feel much more hectic. But this week feel fairly relaxed in my inbox, which is always nice. And I will be working away on, I'm writing Shred Girls book 5 right now. So I think trying to get ahead on that this week is one of my big goals. So.
Okay, well, it's hard being married to you. I can see that Holidays 2026 is the fourth item on this whiteboard that stares me in the face across our office here. So I love you for all your forward thinking, but it's also overwhelming.
Well, I think the horrifying reality of being a publisher and having books and stuff like that is the holiday season does basically start in September. We need to be thinking about it and kind of getting ahead of it. A side note, actually, later this week, I'm going to launch some summer reading bundles where you can get all of the Shred Girls books, and we'll have a young adult bundle and a middle grade bundle that are kind of a mixed bag as well. So if you are a parent, a cool aunt, if you have basically any young woman or younger girl in your life, definitely check out those bundles over on stronggirlpublishing.com, and I'm going to put them out later this week, shipping early July. So easy way to get a bunch of great summer reading material and stickers and fun stuff for kiddos.
Okay, well, at the very least, I'll link over to Strong Girl Publishing to their website. Then you can find it there, I'm sure. And then the other thing, Christmas or wedding season, it's sort of, there was also the big World Series of running, trail running, at least in the States, if not the world, given that a lot of Europeans won this race this past weekend at Western States. I did spend a lot of Saturday watching a sort of glitchy screen go through as people ran 100 miles in California.
It is so funny to me that we are kind of, it's like, funny to say we don't watch as much cycling as I think people assume that we do, but for some reason we just you very much so end up like glued to the screen during Western States in particular, but also UTMB and some of the other bigger, long, like 12 plus hour races that have full coverage from start to finish. Like, we don't watch Unbound from start to finish.
No, I watched a lot of Unbound this year. The coverage was way better for Unbound
That's
this year.
True. Yeah.
Historically, it's been very poor, but yeah, just every year it seems like the amount you can watch and follow the race. Like it's not so much even the footage. It's like, can you follow the race? Because there's like this connection between like having the video, but then you have to have people talking about it, commentating, who are also able to see what's going on and like add context to it, which is very, very hard.
And to continue, especially with these longer races. And I do think what Western States has gotten really good at over the last couple of years, so props to the announcers there, they're very good at continuing to update people on what's going on in the race if you're just tuning in, which realistically, right, it's a 14, it was almost 14 hours for the men and just 15 and a half for the women, or just under 15 and a half for the women. It's hard to stay attached to your TV for that long. So obviously we were in and out of the house and coming in and out of watching the coverage. So it was really nice that they were good at sort of and here's where we're at now. Here's kind of what's happening if you're just tuning in. And I do think Unbound is still, if people are listening, if the Unbound people are listening, one thing they do need to work on in the announcing is if you're just joining us, here's the update.
Yeah, which is very hard to keep coming back because you don't want to annoy people that are experts and have been glued. But I would say most people are dropping in and out, so the odd like refresher of where stuff is and everything. But they're doing a great job. It's a hard thing to do. And so anyhow, I've been watching it now for a few years. So I think I just am perplexed by, these records falling every year and people going faster and faster and faster. Like, just like everyone is getting, even the people that aren't in the top 3 are getting personal bests. These are experienced runners getting personal bests in this race of over an hour in a lot of cases, if not 2 hours in some cases, and still not being on the podium. Like they're finishing in times that would have won the race a year or 2 or 5 years ago, and now are, they're 4th or 10th or whatever.
I was going to say, how annoying do you think it was to be the 4th place guy who broke the course record?
Held by Jim Walmsley, who is like my favorite and like a lot of why I'm watching it. Jim had to drop out in this race, which sort of sucked.
But like to finish 4th while breaking the course record and you're off the podium would be so frustrating, because like that is such an impossible thing to pace for, right? Like I think this year was interesting because the top 4 men all broke the record, which means like think about how difficult that would have been to pace, right? You go in even thinking that you're going to break the course record, and then you find yourself sitting in 4th place.
Yeah.
Like, and what do you do then, right? Do you not break? Like, do you go for broke and either you're going to blow up and not get any record, not finish well, or do you keep on your planned pace? Or was he going for broke and still?
Well, and I think a lot of them probably were having a great day. Like the weather conditions were favorable. It wasn't super hot most of the day, which that race often is hot and at a bit of altitude, which is part of what makes this race such a storied race. But yeah, I think that's interesting. And really for a lot of us, I think there's something there where many times in my life, I have gotten personal bests, whether that's a course time or a power number, while being dropped or not winning, right? I think we've talked last year, there was like one of our provincial races. I actually got a 90-second best off of the start of a mountain bike race and yet got popped off of the lead group of 5. Which is amazing, right? In some ways, it's super exciting, but you have to this is where we get into the outcome goals or the external goals versus those like more process goals, practice goals, personal goals. And that is where we want to have some of these things that these people hopefully can celebrate that they got it. The other one that comes to mind is that 2-hour marathon that recently got achieved in a like actual formal marathon, right? But the second place person also got a sub 2-hour marathon, something that has eluded humans for forever. This like, is it even possible for a human to run this fast? They did it, but no one even knows who the second place person is, despite the fact that they also did it on the same day.
Womp womp.
Yeah. So amazing. So I think that's one of the takeaways I thought from the race was that like a lot of us can do really well and still not win per se. And that win might even be something like, it could even be missing your goal time, but still getting a personal best, whether that's in power or pacing or the time on the course or whatever. I don't know how there'd be all these different things to work around, but or maybe the qualifier, like some of these things are like qualifiers for worlds or things like that. You could get a personal best, and then there's 4 other or 10 other people that get personal bests.
Yeah, and I think the other kind of note I had from the race, the more global thing, is like, I think a lot of these big bucket list races, and I think this is true of cycling as well, a lot of these big bucket list races are becoming very difficult to do unless you are willing to be totally honest, like spend a lot of money.
But are you talking about people at the front of the race? There's a lot of people that are finishing this thing still in a long, long time.
For sure. But I think even like anyone who has like a time goal in this race now has a lot of crew. Like I've crewed someone at Western States before. I've been to it. I've watched it. And I would say this, 4 years ago, I think it was that I crewed. And I would say the top 10 people they had half the crew that the people now have.
Yeah, a lot of them are doing 2 separate crews because it's sort of hard to get with all the mountainous valleys. This is around like Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, which I guess, I mean, realistically, I guess the faster the racing gets, the harder it is to leapfrog efficiently between all of the different aid stations, because it's one of those things where on foot, you're kind of going as the crow flies. So you're running a much more direct route from aid station to aid station, but you have to drive really far around to get to and from all these different aid stations. So yeah, now you basically need to have 2 crews on course. Pretty much every one of the top 10 men and women had between 6 and 12 people coming with them onto the track at the race finish. And some of those are videographers that are there for the teams. But I think that just speaks to the sport is changing. Like ultra is changing. I said this to you yesterday. I would love to see Western States put on a second race. And it could honestly just be pro only and really like invite only, but just a neutral aid only. No crew allowed, no pacers allowed, no nothing. Just neutral support only.
I do think it's one of those things like having seen cyclocross go like so professionalized where you needed mechanics and multiple bikes was always the thing that like I couldn't stand. It was like, how do you get 2 bikes for this thing? It just seems excessive.
Who can hand you the bike is really the big thing.
Right. And so I always thought like it would be nice if there was some sort of category or something that was just, this pure cyclocross where you had to start and finish on this bike. And maybe there is a tech zone, but you do your own tech zone if you have tools or something like that, or for flat tires, maybe. But like you just sort of have to figure out what the limitations are. So yeah, I think in the running stuff, it would be really interesting if it went back to something like that, at least even in some races where they almost made them more unsupported. That would be interesting. It's hard to, it's one of those like genie out of the bottle things though.
Yeah, exactly. Whether you're talking AI, e-mountain bikes,
or carbon-plated shoes that are also accelerating these times. So that's something that was really interesting. Again, very noteworthy that those times came down. I thought from a cycling perspective, there's also the Coast to Coast in Michigan this year, which is sort of like a long-distance gravel race. And it also had a bunch of course times. And I think our friend Adam Hill, who's just over from like sort of the Aurelia area near us, very accomplished endurance racer, both running and biking. And he has, I think, been on every place on the podium in over the years, but he was 4th, I think I saw. And I think also under the course record time, but was 4th. and so like, yeah, really, really cool that like everything is just going so fast, right? And in biking, I think there's maybe a bit of like technology in the bikes still, but like just at some point this has to stop, this like always getting the course record thing.
Well, at the same time, though, we also saw Lael Wilcox have to drop out of her around the world record in the last week because of the heat waves in Europe and just too much.
Oh, was that? I saw that she dropped out. Was that sort of the main precipitating thing?
Yeah, she was just getting like not heat stroke, but whatever is kind of under that, like heat exhaustion.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just getting to be too dangerous to keep going and keep pushing at the record pace that she was pushing at. So kind of akin to what I talked about when I dropped out of Sulphur Springs, like there's just this point where it's like, yes, she could pause, kind of get through the heat, get over the heat exhaustion.
But then it's not the goal anymore.
Get back on the bike and keep going. But she wasn't going to get the goal. She already had done the around the world. Like it's not like she hadn't done it before. And she has the women's record. She was going for the overall record. So yeah, I mean, obviously she made the right, smart call for her, for sure.
Okay.
But I think that just also speaks to climate changes, in fact, coming for our races. And Western states, actually, arguably the record dropped because the weather was really good this year, but kind of like historic lows almost.
Yeah, in some ways, for sure. And then, I mean, even, I don't know if you saw the UCI, it would be like a US Cup race this past weekend. And I'm blanking, I think it was in Utah. And they had to actually shorten the race in the middle of a mountain bike race, like XCO race, for lightning. So they did, the pro men did 3 laps instead of 5. And they just said, that's the race right there. It's over.
Yeah. Well, and we had to cancel. I mean, lightning here is not, I would not blame climate change for lightning in the summer up here, but we had to cancel our trail series this Thursday because of lightning.
I don't know if that's quite on the same notable level, but
and Steamboat actually almost had to cancel or shorten because of the air quality from fires nearby in Frisco, I believe.
Yeah, so an interesting element, I think, that's sort of a bummer of a news item, but it also sort of relates to these like goals and what are we trying to get out of sport and making sure that we do support events as well. But that's sort of just like this evolving narrative around, performance, even because we have these environmental factors that you can win in terms of having really good conditions, but you could have the hottest conditions ever as well, right? And really slow things down.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's get into our questions.
Okay,
we have one on unremarkable workouts. We have some things about stretching, some actual like shifting technical questions, and another, I think I'm going to say, cycling computer style question. But before we do that, quick thank you to our friends over at Payable. So if you've been listening to the podcast, we've been working with Payable Forms for quite a while now. So Payable is an add-on that you can use with Google Forms to take payment in a Google form. So basically, if you need to take payment for anything, whether it's club registration, Girl Scout cookie sales, jersey sales, t-shirt sales, a lot of t-shirts here, a lot of clothing items I'm listing. Basically, if there's anything you need to take a payment for and you don't want to have to build an entire external website to do it, you can do it in a Google form with the Payable add-on.
That's right. And we use a lot of events will use this. It could almost be like your ticketing engine for it, or a little weekly races have also used it sort of to sign up for the race. What's your name? What category? And here's your $10. And then you can come race on Tuesdays. So it's a really simple system for some of these like smaller businesses. And really, my favorite thing is that it keeps it just in like a Google Sheet. You just print the Google Sheet of the people coming to your event and you're all set.
Yes, and you can find our favorite templates and get started basically in just a few minutes. You can head to payableapps.com/athlete. So we'll include a link to that in the show notes, payableapps.com/athlete, and you can get our favorite templates and some good deals. Quick note though, they don't have subscription costs, so they only make money if you do. So yeah, really great service. Definitely check it out. All right, on to our first question. Unremarkable workouts. This sounds an awful lot like my fancy business workouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yours was sort of like, no, there's nothing fancy about this workout.
Nothing fancy, all business. So these are, I would consider to be the meat and potatoes of a training plan. You might call them just the potatoes of the training plan, but I think this question is really trying to ask, like, are they actually doing anything?
Mm-hmm. So this would be like in Molly, like in running, any running, not just your running, but like a strides workout. Or, I think people have asked the same question about, I would just love 90 minutes of endurance. You might call this zone 2. It's just sort of like you ride for 90 minutes. It's not hard. There's no testing of your legs. There's nothing in it really. You just sort of do what people say they do when, zone 2. And then it's like, oh, this isn't like a breakthrough workout or an intensity workout, or it's not like making you fitter. You're not getting a power best on it. Is it important? And I would say that, as Molly says, it's like actually the base of everything. Like it is, I guess, sort of base as well. You need these in between other workouts to sort of, you could say, to act as recovery, but it is just like giving you endurance. It is giving you frequency of training. Dan Cleather would say there's maybe like a skill component to this, but also just like you're feeling better when you're done these workouts as well, right? So they're very important, but no, they're not meant to be like vomiting or you're like exhausted at the end of them.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a bunch of, like, maybe this is like a decade, I'd say like 15, 20 years ago, junk miles was this like phrase that got bounced around so much that I think really kind of scared people off of doing anything other than vomit workouts. Right? Like, because everyone heard like, don't do junk miles, or you're just doing junk miles. And I think a lot of people kind of misinterpreted or misunderstood what was being said about them. I think also some coaches and quote unquote like experts also misunderstood what they were. So talk about how junk miles and these just normal base zone 1, zone 2 rides.
Sure. Yeah. And that sometimes gets misinterpreted too. Like sometimes you'll see junk miles be really like easy or just noodling and not, you're sort of coasting and then pedaling, but then maybe you're pedaling harder or just like not, maybe it would be like zone 1 or something like that. So that sometimes is what they call junk miles. You're just sort of like out there moving around, but it's not like at any sort of pace or consistent pace. And then sometimes you'll also see junk miles as sort of that like middle ground where you're sort of like a high zone 2, getting towards tempo and maybe bouncing between. And so you'll see people talk about junk miles sometimes like that. But usually I think what people mean is more that like you're out for 7 hours and just noodling around and not really like pushing into maybe zone 2. And I often see it more as like it's like on and off. It's like just sort of like sporadic, like when you're pedaling.
Right. See, I remember feeling like junk miles, and I guess this is maybe like the point that I'm trying to make, is like we've misinterpreted it grossly. Like I always thought of junk miles as sort of these shorter, just kind of average, easy runs, basically. Like what are you even doing? It's either you have to do like an epically long run or ride for it to count, or it needs to be, vomit-inducingly hard for it to count. Everything else is just junk.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes it was like you were wasting your time. So that's where I was sort of like, it's those like you're out for 5 hours, but like there's no benefit to your 5 hours. And probably, you could say that would be true in terms of like strict physiology, that like if someone who was very time limited spent their very limited time doing, they have to do 3 hours and it's not really like at any sort of like steady pace, then you maybe could spend your time slightly better a lot of the time. But to your point, like I think at some point, like if we're out moving and we're enjoying it, this is like the Steven Seiler TED Talk was always very good, or is very good with this. This is the myth of no pain, no gain. And it's sort of just like a lot of those Norwegian training miles or the classic endurance training miles are easier. And then there's a little bit of intensity sprinkled throughout the week. So I do think that like when we're doing these unremarkable workouts, you could still be like steady and in like your zone 2. Like I am very much like steady, but I'm not like pushing to zone 3 to make it moderate. It would be like an endurance ride. And ideally your legs do keep moving. So I do think that there can be focus there, but we want to be careful that it's not just slowly becoming like a moderate or a tempo style interval. And then the question here was actually more about sort of like what you would call a strides workout, or just something that with like a couple little accelerations or spin ups or race pace efforts, I sometimes call these, or sometimes I just call them strides, even though you're on a bike, and you're just sort of doing pickups, right? I guess that's the other thing they call them in runs, where you like go fast for 20 or 30 seconds and then you just go back to your endurance pace. And those are, again, like what Dan Cleather would say is more of like a skill. Like you're just sort of like touching that. Maybe you're opening up the legs a little bit, but it's not maximal. They're not at the end of it. It's not very hard. You're just sort of like sprinkling those through the workout. And so something like that, again, like it doesn't make you feel like you've done the maximal sprint of your life or you have really hard VO2 max workout. But that's the point, is that you've spent a little extra time at sort of a race pace or a fast pace. And so you're getting some skill practice out of that, or some coordination perhaps out of that, but it's not meant to be like the most, stimulating workout of the week.
Okay. Love it.
Yeah.
Anything else to add there before we?
No, I don't think so. I think that's like you want to picture those as like the as you said, meat and potatoes, but almost, and not filler isn't the right word either, but just like they're the workouts that go between the key workouts, right? So if you had like a key Wednesday interval workout and then like a key Saturday long ride or interval ride or race ride or group ride, the other ones are just like they should be not focused or not intense or not like really depleting.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I almost have I struggle with this question, because it honestly, like, I can't imagine only going out and hitting my Wednesday workout and Saturday long run. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't fathom what my legs would feel like if I didn't do any other runs or workouts and just hit those.
Right.
I would be wrecked.
Right. And I do think that that's sometimes the difference when you look at like an elite person's training, is like there's all these like unremarkable workouts around those like really big ones. Whereas if you're more time limited, you maybe get the Wednesday workout in, but you don't get all that supporting, we'll call it base or the mileage or whatever you want to call it, right? Like in runners, it's sort of like when someone runs 100 miles a week, there's a lot of just like unremarkable miles in the week. And then they maybe do a track workout and they maybe do like a hills workout or something in that week. And maybe they have their long run, right? Which also gives miles. But like a lot of those miles are just coming from an 8 miler or a 5 miler or like a little PM run or something like that, right? And so biking would be similar. We have the 5-hour ride on the weekend, maybe. We have maybe the interval ride in the middle of the week. But then there's a lot of just 90 minutes or 1 hour that make up whatever the number of hours you ride in the week.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Okay, so keep the unremarkable in, as I call it, fancy business. Okay, should I include stretching? Dun, dun, dun. I feel like this is one of those ones that like every 2 years the science shifts. Mm-hmm. First, it was like when we were kids, it was the static stretching before runs or before like activity. And it was, you got to do your, your toe touches and your, very pulling your foot back.
Almost like a military styled thing or something.
Yeah. So you had those. And then dynamic stretching was like all the rage. I'd say 10 years ago, it started becoming more and more popular. And to be honest, I'm actually not sure where we are today with stretching.
I don't know. Like if Greg Layman's been on the podcast a bunch and he's guilty, he'll admit of like in the past saying like, oh, stretching was bad, you shouldn't do it. And then now he's come back. And I think that where a lot of people are is like, you can do it if you want to. You should probably move, and we should all probably move a bit more than we do and in more varied ways. But I think that's where I usually come down is like, it is good. You've seen like some of the public health recommendations actually back off. It used to be like included alongside strength and cardio. And then the thing is like, again, people only have so much time and are only willing to do, like, it's hard to get people, especially the general population, to exercise, to move. And so the debate was, even though it's good, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like, would you actually tell someone to spend 2 hours of their limited time, keeping in mind that the recommendations for like cardiovascular exercise are 150 minutes is usually what you see, right? So to say 120 minutes of stretching or something like this is a lot of time spent stretching for the benefit you might get. And it's possible to get a lot of benefit from stretching during the other recommended period, which is our 2 by 30 minutes of strength training that's often recommended in these health recommendations. So where I usually come down is like, can we turn this into a more active mobility, a more active yoga, more active Pilates, more active strength training, where in our warm-ups, between our things, we can certainly be working on elements of mobility. We could be doing a stretch, but we could also be doing strength training, if not like a circuit training thing, and if we're talking more general population and general fitness, we can be doing elements of cardiovascular fitness, strength training, and flexibility, mobility, all in the same workout. Like, we should probably just be putting it all together when we're talking about more general population. And for a endurance population that hates doing strength training and things that are not their main sport, understandably, I would say that like that's where I would come down, is that we want to do, Molly's done a few yoga videos on the website, and usually they're quite hard because they have things like push-ups and they have things like squats or lunges alongside what you would consider more like flexibility, like a downward dog, hamstring stretch, shoulder stretch. Something like that is fantastic to do too. So we definitely want to include mobility and stretching, but I think a lot of times it's sort of can and should be embedded more in like a movement training or a strength training type practice.
Yeah. I mean, I always talk about, I love my morning routine, and it's 10 to 15 minutes. And I know that's a lot for some people. I think you can do it much shorter. And I think as we're talking about time crunched people, though, it is difficult to try to do stretching before a workout. So I would actually say versus stretching, I think just actually taking the minute to warm up rather than going right into your ride or run or whatever. Like, as I've gotten older, I've realized I can't run just from the end of the driveway anymore. I need to actually walk like a block even, just to get moving a little bit, let my back sort of work its way out of being, sitting on the couch all morning working.
Yeah, and certainly beforehand, forever the rule of thumb has been to like not do static stretching before. You can. I don't think there's like a huge downside. It's like again, everything's like wishy-washy in research, but you probably want to start getting yourself, the other elements of a warm-up are like getting warm and getting mentally prepared. So things like arm swings and leg swings and lunging down the road, or a multi-way lunge is one we use a lot. These are definitely like beneficial things before a workout, but you could sprinkle them during a workout, right? You're at a traffic light or you're in the park, and then you do a bit of like hanging from a bar or something like that. So there's lots of ways you could put that range of motion work into your workouts.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Shifting under load. So on the bike, you're on a hill, you're climbing.
And maybe you're doing one of these 30-second strides, or you're doing like a hill interval, or a sprint is probably the most like aggressive version of this. And I think the idea would be, this person said like they need to go up to like above their threshold power to before the sprint, so that they can avoid doing shifting during the sprint.
So they're like shifting down into a harder gear in order to be able to then push hard enough to do the sprint, because they're either on a hill or just like heading into a sprint.
Well, just if you think about like, you're going to go really hard, and then eventually your speed will come up. So then now your gear will be quote unquote too easy. You'll be spinning a very high cadence. And so then you have to sprint in the middle of like especially like an 8-second or 10-second sprint that's very hard and very short. You're going to end up having to like clutch or back off, so to speak, to get the shift in.
This sort of also sounds to me like a bit of an erg mode problem. Like, I'm curious if this person is using the trainer a lot when they ask this question.
No, they were outside, but like picture yourself on like you're out on the street and you're going to sprint your friend down to the traffic light, or maybe not to the traffic light, but like to the town sign down the road. And you start pedaling as hard as you can. Like, immediately your gear will be too easy once your speed increases, right?
I guess. Like,
You're going from 20 kilometers an hour to 40 kilometers an hour, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that you have to go all the, like, I'm not sure that shifting forces you to go all the way to threshold for any like meaningful amount of time before a sprint.
Well, I guess what they're thinking is they're going to get to 40 kilometers an hour and then they're sprinting, right? And so, like, I guess that would be the idea that you're closer to the sprint speed. But the problem is you've now fatigued yourself for the sprint. And what a lot of this misses, when we start getting into this is true of skills training. If we start talking about cornering and I say, remember to put your foot and your pedal in this place and your hip and your hands, then you're going to get so confused and really do a horrible corner. Whereas if we can boil it down to more like something you're externally trying to do. So if we take a sprint and we say you're racing your friend to that sign, go, a lot of the how do we do it gets ironed out. You just try and get to that point as fast as you can. Now, it's okay to shift when you're doing that, and it's okay to shift when you're standing up, but some of this is skill. Like, you do need to sort of like figure it out. But one of the biggest mistakes I see, whether someone's on the trainer, as you said, Molly, it does get aggravated on the trainer because people have time to think. And sometimes that's bad.
I think like erg mode like bogs it down.
Well,
so,
you shouldn't.
Like, as you're shifting, it's like doing weird things with your cadence to stay at the power, and then you're now down to like 2 RPMs a minute, like stomping the pedal.
That's a good point. Like the erg mode sort of like doesn't let you sprint naturally because the harder you go, the more it will back off if you're pushing above its average target that it's using. So it's not really like how a bicycle works in the real world. Again, when I pedal faster, then eventually my cadence will come up and the power comes up with it.
So maybe I'm actually almost thinking, I guess this person maybe is using erg mode indoors where it like switches the power for you. So you just can keep pedaling and like you've never had to like actually shift into it. So going outside and then like learning to shift into it is actually difficult because like, I guess when I hear this question, I'm like, yeah, you would just like pick up your cadence a little bit so you have a little bit more like leeway and then you're shifting as you're gradually ramping up your effort.
That's right. Yeah.
Versus kind of like staying very like steady and calm and shifting and shifting and shifting like and then sprinting. Exactly what you were saying though. It really is just like one fluid motion.
And so like gearing is one of the most like odd things to teach someone. It's very hard, but like the idea with gearing is that you're always in a gear that you could accelerate. So your cadence isn't too low, it isn't too high, it's just right. And then you could go from, if you're pedaling along at 80 or 90 RPM, you could in theory accelerate to 90 or 100 or 120 RPM. Like if you watch a sprinter, they have a huge cadence range. And maybe they're going to shift one harder just before they sprint. Maybe like that's that in the group you can hear when it's like click, click, and then like everyone's like hammering. And so that's how they're trying to solve that. Like at some point I'm going to have to shift during this attack, during the sprint. And so sometimes you'll hear people shift early, but often what's happened is they've almost like pedaled, the group starting to surge. And then you'll hear that like click, 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 bang, bang, bang. And then they're going to pedal as hard as they can. And when we say pedal as hard as you can, it's pedaling faster. You're just pedal more. It's like you're on a single speed bicycle. You're going to race your friend to the corner. You pedal as fast as you can and as hard as you can, and that's sprinting. And then the nice thing is that we have gears on our bike. So if we find that we're at the top of our cadence range, so for me, maybe I hit 105 RPM, I'm standing and sprinting, then as I'm sort of going, I have to just like back off for half a pedal stroke, still standing, and hit that gear shifter, and then it goes click. Sometimes it goes bang, and then you are back on the gas as hard as you can. So when we stand and that bike's moving side to side, there's a couple nice spots in that cycle where you can actually just miss one of your push downs and soft pedal through like half the pedal stroke, and then the gear will come. Now, again, takes a lot of practice. So that's why we include things like a 30-second attack or a 30-second stride in the middle, so that both our body gets used to accelerating, but also the skill of shifting and standing and accelerating is grooved. And this gets back to that Dan Cleather, the Unremarkable workouts should make us feel better and develop our skill.
And even the best people drop their chain every so often.
Yeah, it's not so bad now without the front shifter, but it does happen.
I mean, I'm pretty sure like at least 5 of the people that were in the top 10 at the Giro d'Italia had dropped chain issues during the race.
Oh, did they? Yeah, it certainly happened. A lot of times it's like bumpy coming into like a climb or something. Are you sure they didn't have doubles though?
I don't think so. And I mean,
there was no way they're racing road on a single.
I don't know. All I know is like there have been a lot of drop chains in the peloton this season. So just if it happens, it happens. Like this is just part of the learning curve and just part of how technology works, unfortunately.
Okay.
The other thing I was thinking too is I think there's also maybe this like binary of like I'm in zone 2 and then I'm sprinting.
Oh, yeah. No, sprinting
that's
there
not
is
how
no
that-
there is no zone. You just go, right?
But also like that's just not how like yes, you just go, but like this person is like stressed because they're in threshold briefly. Yes.
Well, but this is like what you're saying with like erg mode or right on the trainer, where like they're waiting for the 30-second effort to come for like the 10 minutes beforehand. And the easiest way to make your sprints make more sense is just don't get ready for it. Just like when either the beeper goes off because you're running the workout, or you're sprinting every 10 minutes, on the minute, then just go. Like just don't try. And maybe you'll start in the wrong gear, but this is how races work. You are in the wrong gear, and now is the time that we need to go. And so you need your body and your mind and your shifting need to get used to like, well, what do I do if I'm in too hard a gear? Do I deal with it? Can I deal with this sensation, this cadence I'm in, or do I actually have to shift easier to get the gear that I can then accelerate? And so that's all great practice. But this person was saying, okay, in 2 minutes, I'm going to have to go really hard. So I'm going to get
so they're
up.
already shifting up in that 2 minutes.
Yeah. And they're trying to think like I'm getting up to speed, and then the power is like closer to the sprint. And it's just, no, like the sprint, you want to go from, you're rested, especially in a sprint workout. You want to go from rested to sprinting and then resting.
Yeah, well, because that's what you're going to have to do in a race. Like,
well, potentially. I mean, you could also do a workout where you were doing threshold and then sprinted out of it. That's another type of interval. For sure, you could do that. That was not this type of interval, but that would be another one. And maybe, because you're riding at speed and then like you sprint from that, like that would be like, what is that called? Like they do this in running, like a flying start or something like that, where you come into the run. And for runners, it's actually maybe in some ways safer and maybe related, right? Like it's easier to just accelerate a bit more out of already running fast on your body, right? Because where do the sprinters and stuff, it's usually that accelerating where the hamstrings get blown up and everything else too, right? So you can do like a more of a flying start, but I think most bikers are moving when they go, as opposed to like slowing way down or doing like a mountain bike style standing race start would be another type of start we do as well.
I'd actually be so interested with sprinters on the track, like track and field, like 100-meter start or 100-meter run. I actually wonder what would happen if you had like 100-meter with a flying start. So you had like 100 meters and then the actual 100 meters starts. I wonder if it'd be
fast. Like a 200-meter race?
Well, I wonder if you could actually do a faster 100-meter if you could start if the first 100 didn't count. You were only timed on the second 100.
Oh, I think...
So you could come
I don't know enough
it.
about 200, but I would guess that it probably is a faster 100 in the 200.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. That's showing our non-knowledge of track racing. But
yeah.
I would say because you don't have the acceleration period that they probably... But that's a good question. Would they run? I don't know.
Yeah, could you jog in? How much would you jog into it?
I feel like I could look this up while we're doing this, or what?
Well, I don't think it exists as a race, though. I'm saying I would actually enjoy seeing a race where you had...
Or you want them to just ease into the first 100 versus a 200-meter race.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the race only starts after you've run 100 meters, and then it's just the next 100 meters that counts. So I'm just curious. Anyway, last question. Normalized power or average power? So for tracking progress across the interval workout blocks, so threshold, VO2, should they use normalized power or average power? And now I'm not sure if this is during the workout or after the workout to decide if it worked or not, or was right or not.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question, isn't it? Yeah. I don't usually put a lot of normalized power up onto my screen.
I also roll with whichever one gave me the highest power and made me look the coolest.
Usually that's normalized, but there's situations it cannot. I just want to reiterate that I was correct that usually the 200-meter runners are faster in the second 100 than the first.
Oh, there we go. So I want to see a 100-meter race. It's sort of like how I want the Western States to have a no crew version.
Yeah.
I want to add this new track and field category of the flying 100.
So then would everyone just get up to a set speed together, and you'd have a laser they're all following, and then you'd say go as they start the
I
last
think they can
100?
just start it as fast as they want, so they can come off the blocks in like full sprint, or they can like jog a little bit.
But wouldn't
like,
everyone just run a 200 meter?
acceleration.
If you were trying to get to the finish line, you would just run a normal 200.
I don't think so, because you don't
Well,
like.
you can't sag the first 100 and
Why
then win.
not?
Because you'd lose.
No, but your only time.
These races are very fast. I don't know if you've seen a 200 meter.
But the timer doesn't start until you've run 100 meters.
Okay, so then you would want to like slowly bring people to that line at a set pace then. Like a neutral start.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, call it a neutral start. I was thinking everyone could go at whatever pace they wanted. So some people might like find that they can send it out of the out of it. And
You'd
get
have
up
to.
the momentum.
I guess if you ran it as a individual time trial and then timed just the last 100 meters.
That's what I want.
Okay, but you can't be a group run then. I don't think you'd have to do time trials.
I think it could be interesting.
Okay, well, we'll
Track and
move
field,
on from
call
that.
me.
Okay, back to normalized power. So one thing that gets overlooked a lot of times, normalized power is only used because what it is a rolling 30-second average. So if you exercise for 30 seconds, then there isn't really a rolling 30-second average until you start getting out like into minutes, because like it needs 30-second periods to then start averaging. Does that make sense? So at 28 seconds, there's not really a valid average because we haven't had 30 seconds. And then even at 30 seconds, now you just have one number. And so like, right, like one valid number of 30-second samples, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so what the normalized power of algorithm effectively does, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but let's keep it easy. I'm not a math person. Once we get out to 20 minutes, now we have lots of samples that it can sort of like normalize or smooth out and give you sort of like, had you gone steady rather than riding your mountain bike really hard or doing 30-30 intervals for 20 minutes or more, or doing a crit race for an hour, had you just ridden steady, the equivalent average power that maybe you could have done, in theory, that would have been a similar difficulty would be whatever this normalized power number is. And so in these situations, the crit race, the 30-30 workout, the mountain bike race, the average power will be lower because you keep coasting around every corner and on the downhills and whatever, and between the 30-30, the 30-30 is hard, 30-30 easy. So your average is going to be lower because of all those zeros or lower periods. But then the normalized, because it smooths it, is going to be higher. Okay, does that sort of make sense?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Why does any of it matter?
Well, it's just a way to play with math and analyzing things, but sometimes it's just nice to know that, okay, I did my 30-30s or my mountain bike race, and it's like maybe close to my threshold, or it's like pretty hard, right, relative to my threshold. So it sort of gives you that, like, physiologically, this was like this hard, right? Or else it's sort of depressing. You look at your mountain bike race, you went really hard, and it's like, oh, you averaged like a high zone 2 type power, right? Like a power that the average is sort of like not representative of how hard that was. Whereas if we did a 20-minute time trial, right, very steady, right at our threshold, then the average would be you'd say, wow, that was really hard. That was right at my threshold, right? So that's what it's trying to solve. It's like any math. It's not like a perfect thing. You can certainly have issues with this. Someone who is like a really strong like mountain biker a lot of times can really like bust a normalized power like that's really high, and then to do it steady would be maybe very hard for them. So it's not perfect. It doesn't mean that you could definitely do this as an average power, but that's the idea. So the first mistake then is just like if you're looking at stuff that's shorter than 20 minutes, that's always like, not recommended, I guess, by the people that made the algorithm.
Gotcha. Okay. And I think like just to kind of follow up, what should be on the cycling computer during these?
Yeah, I don't usually bother. Some people will do like during their mountain bike race or their mountain bike workout, they'll put that on the screen and like try to ride. But I always think like in a lot of these settings, there's like the little micro intervals. So in mountain biking, just going hard on the climb or when you can pedal is the focus, and not drilling a tree. So you probably aren't even looking at it too much. You can probably just use the 3-second power, some of these little micro averages to, if you were using power to pace your race or your effort. And then in something like a 30-30 workout, you usually have like a very set target. So if I'm going up a mountain or just like across on the road and I'm going 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy, it's usually pretty like specific, the power you're trying to hold on and then the power you're trying to hold off. So again, the normalized power isn't really helping you during the workout. It's more of a in post. You can look at that as sort of like, oh, how hard was the normalized for the whole set, or even for the workout, right? Even just when I do like 5x3 minute hill intervals or something like that, you could look at the normalized power for the workout and be like, oh, wow, that was like a burly average. I did 280 watts for, 3 hours or something, right? Like that would be like, oh, wow, that's for me, that would be like a great workout. Okay. And so that would be the other place you can look at like the whole workout and just to get a sense of like how hard that workout was. And of course, like normalized power, I should say, is also used for all these other metrics that Training Peaks World uses. So like all the TSS and the, what other one is intensity factor. These ones are all derived from the normalized power rather than the average to try and get at that problem, right? Is like, if we're going to give you a training stress score, do we use the normalized power or the average power? So it does use the normalized power.
Gotcha.
Okay. So does that make sense? So was there a question there around the duration too?
I mean, I guess they have they have threshold and or VO2.
Yeah. So the average is like, usually we would look at the interval lap average, almost, I would anyhow, like for most intervals, that's what we would look at. So even in like a 30-30, like on and off thing, you're looking at those like periods during it as like each interval you're trying to hit X amount of power. And then in a VO2 interval, like you're trying to hit this. In your 20-minute time trials, you're trying to hit this average power. And then I would say that the normalized power is more something that's like in post, you would put that up, but you can certainly put it on your device and see what you think. Like it's not going to necessarily mislead you, but usually the average power is what you're doing your intervals based off of.
Cool. Love it. Okay, let's wrap up with that very nerdy question. We have a couple more questions that we'll get to next week, but of course, keep the questions coming. You can find us at consummateathlete.com or at consummateathlete over on Instagram. And we do have an anonymous question form, or you can just slip into our DMs. All right, with that, hope everyone has a lovely long weekend with lots of great training adventures here, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.